To take a tangent on a tangent, actually.
Tangent.
Speak to me about ideas, because I'm fascinated by this concept, right? There's this concept that, ideas have people don't have ideas, right? And like we kind of, you kind of link that into creativity a bit with kind of the idea of the muse, right? How when you're kind of tapping into something, it's something that's kind of bigger than you, and you tap into it to actually express it through your singular perspective. But like the idea that ideas have people has often fascinated me, because it kind of means that these things are ancient, like kind of to bring into kind of the conversation the kind of the picture that you showed me and the quote that was on top. Speak to me first of what the quote is. I can't pronounce it because it was in Latin. And then also like talk to me about how that idea of that kind of like shows up in people's lives and shows up in your life, for example.
Oh yeah, this is brilliant. I believe that ideas are just they are paramount. They're not made in vacuums. They're just is all kind of just continuous. When I was studying fine art at uni, they were touching on the idea.
We're going to say idea a lot.
No pun intended. They were touching on the idea that the classic artists were the journey of classical art and art into modern art was just a conversation about ideas, and I think that is kind of true in the sense of kind of just in all art, is that we have these perspectives, these things that we are aware of. We are aware of many things. We're aware of all our senses, and what these senses mean onto our reality, we then convey with each other, and discussing these perspectives and these details of our experience as they change is what I believe gives the illusion of kind of the creating of ideas in art, is because we go from, it's like in a conversation, we go from one point to the next, building off the perspective that we are both kind of just discussing. And I think that's in all art. Someone's going to rebuttal or going to take this aspect of what you perceived, and then they're gonna kind
build
of
on that.
Like shape it around their own perspective, or shape their perspective around that kind of idea that was conveyed to them, and then just bounce that back in the continuous kind of bouncing of ideas. So if loads of creatives have always kind of said it's just that like we are just kind of picking ideas out of the universe.
Yes.
Like Pharrell Williams said it quite a lot.
Yes.
That it's just there, and you're there to just kind of see that timeless melody or that song structure. But the way that I see it, and I said it in the poem, which was about fine art, is that I believe it has a deep rooted relationship with physics and philosophy. I believe that what we are seeing is just the cause and effect of kind of just the whole universe existing.
Yes. It's just playing out.
Yeah. And you're just paying attention to your snippet in this moment.
Yes.
And in that you can, if you look at it kind of very abstractly, or if anything, not necessarily abstractly.
We can go abstract. I like abstract.
He could. But if anything, more generally, if you look at it from just like the wider perspective, it would look like there's no ideas. It would look like there's nothing going on. But the more you kind of pay attention, the more you sit in your own mind, is having the relationship between your consciousness and the universe. I think it was Spinoza who spoke about this. the true experience of the world comes from the crossing of the bridge between your consciousness and the universe. And I think in that sense, the universe is the physical kind of or the thing that exists, and your mind is just is the void. So if you're always in the void, or you start in the void, and then you see a glimpse of the thing, the paramount universe that's just always been, and you see a glimpse into the reality of your void conscious, it's gonna seem like an idea has just come out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? It's gonna seem like, oh, this has just happened.
Yes.
But it's like,
it was always
every sentence that, for example, you've written on a piece of paper, those sentences were always always there. Do you know what I mean? Like those words were created way before you. Someone most probably has written
the exact same sentence over before.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
bringing form to it. No, okay, cool. So that's fascinating too, and that sends me on so many tangents. But
you wanted to know.
I wanted to know about that. Yeah, the quote. Yeah.
So we'll go into that. So
we're back. So technical difficulties, but we're back. But you were talking about the ideas behind the quote and the words that you live by.
Just for anyone that's watching, there's a drawing that my friend did for me, which I asked for two quotes that meant a lot to me, to be kind of the basis of what the drawing was about. The first one is mors vincit omnia, which means death conquers all in Latin, and sit under the sun, abdicate and be your own king, which is a quote by Fernando Pessoa. It was the final quote at the end of my favorite book, Epileptic, by David B., who I think is one of the most interesting authors I've ever come across.
I need to check him out. I've never heard of him. That's crazy.
He's a graphic novelist, so he draws the whole book. And if anything, I take a lot of influence from this guy as well. But those two quotes, it meant a lot to me, and it kind of made me understand the value of life. And I think with art, especially in all the stuff that I do, I think that's like one of the main focuses is how much you value or see what the elements of worth of your own life. And so mors vincit omnia came from the Roman mortal reminders, and that came about because slowly from the point I was 18 onwards, my relationship with the idea and the concept of death kind of became very apparent to me, and it scares you. It just breaks your reality. There's no other way to say it, but like you,
it's basically existential, right?
Yeah, like you live your life, like your adolescence, like with just kind of like really enjoying the fact that you're just alive. You know what I mean? That's like the forefront of everything you do.
Yeah.
And then when the concept of death comes around, it shatters that kind of
challenge in a sense,
that illusion, that kind of rose tinted glasses, and you then start to really see kind of your own insecurities come forward. And this is where and especially at that point where you're starting to make a lot of the decisions by yourself and for yourself, these kind of insecurities that are just governed by the idea of your own kind of self-worth and making things matter because eventually you might die. It rules your world. It just rules it, and there's not much you can do about it in the moment because it's really intense. And at some point, for you to break free from it, you have to come to terms with it. You really have to come to terms with that idea that you will die, and it took me a while. It's still taking me
how did you come to terms with it?
I think it takes a lifetime.
How did you come to terms with it? Not just death, but also the idea that because for me, right, just speak a little bit about myself too, when I had that first realization of that, it kind of made me very urgent in everything I do. in literally anything I do, it was like I gotta do this now, and I can't waste any time, because obviously like death comes for us all. And I think that it was such a massive kind of reality distortion field on everything that I thought was important to me, and I realized most of these things aren't important to me. So it made me change how I looked at like just leisure, how I looked at like the things that are important, like the fear even. What was that like for you? How did it make you reevaluate emotions or passions or ambition or anything like that?
Well, I was very erratic. I was very like daring. If anything, I didn't care about danger as much before, and then after it, I just started to realize all the different ways that I've been compromising kind of like myself and also like people around me, and it leads to there's many different emotions that it can kind of lead to. For example, like guilt is a big one. You would feel like you're not doing enough for yourself, and you would blame yourself for your reality, even though it's not your fault. And that's the thing, is like you're just existing, and existing is not something for you to blame yourself for. And I think it makes you hyper aware, like really, really hyper aware onto like what's happening, how you're feeling, how you're thinking about this, how you're going to react to this. You start thinking about the whole span of the timeline, from the future to the present to the past, all in very, very small condensed amount of times. So you'll just be sitting there just thinking about just everything, and then all it is that you end up thinking, and thinking doesn't do anything. So you end up doing nothing.
You feel terrible about that, so then endlessly.
And it's exactly. And is that's kind of what happened, is that it threw me into this endless cycle of kind of just mulling over the ifs and the buts and the whats and the what's and the hows, and it takes a lot of trial and error, like a lot of trial and error of letting go of a lot of things, and learning how to let go of kind of these things. I would say is the biggest and the most time consuming challenge, and it's also the most painful one, because I always thought that the worst emotion in life is regret, because it sticks. It really, really, really does stick. Doing palliative care made me understand that, because I would meet people, and just the first thing that kind of comes out, or the first thing that they put on the table is it's like, why me? Why? I wish I could have done this. I wish it could have been any other way. I wish I didn't do that. And then the people that were the most happy were the ones that just went, you know what? Like, I love everything that I did, and and that's all that I care about.
Yes. And
it goes into the next quote, because I think these two quotes pair hand in hand. Sit under the sun, abdicate, and be your own king, by Fernando Pessoa. It's from the Book of Disquiet, which is a book that dances on the idea of insignificance, virtue, and also kind of anonymousness, like being a nobody in this world, but also having a story to tell, and attaching kind of an identity, or if not necessarily meaning, but just paying attention to a passing insignificant moment, and kind of recognizing it for its own kind of linear path in reality. And that makes you realize that, it made me realize that, if I was to break down the quote, and why it means a lot to me, is that at the end of the day, like, you're gonna walk your own line, and you couldn't people might see that you exist. You would have your friends that will know you exist, but then there's billions of people that literally don't have it's not that they don't care. Everyone cares. Like, trust me, it's not that they don't care. It's just that they don't know who you are.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, if you ever met them,
yes,
they would care. Like,
you're right.
You know what I mean? You go somewhere and they'll be like, hey, what's your name? Do you know what I mean? Like, in that moment, you're now real to them.
Yes.
And now but it's just like they don't know. And this is how you walk your life. This is how you're going to walk your line for your whole life. Is that some people, sadly, don't ever even get this exposure. For example, like homeless people on the street, they don't get enough exposure from other people. They're just faces in the dark.
Yeah, shut from society.
Do you know what I mean? And this is like, you are no greater, or if anything, you are just as insignificant as significant, or you're just as much as a nobody to them or other people, as much as like anyone else could be a nobody to you, or just like not exist. Just you pass and that's it. You go about your day and you forget right after that, and they just disappear from your existence.
Yeah. And
the idea of the quote is that to find real peace and virtue in your life is that you have in that opportunity to be the most significant thing to yourself. You can be the own king of your own world. And the idea is that you should abdicate away from being significant, being a king of, being recognized as a king in other people's realities, or even a king over other people's realities. It depends on who you want to be. Some people want to be politicians, but some people want to know that other people recognize their worth, or want to know that, like,
they chase fame and notoriety and stuff like that.
That's like the extreme side, but it's even on like a baseline level of, for example, social media is a big thing about it as well, and it's like just to be present, just this desire to exist, not just in your own world, but when you can abdicate and be your own king, you can bask in your own sunlight, you can shine for yourself, you can take it in, and that joy, you can basically find complete happiness and virtue in just walking your own line and doing whatever you need to do, despite what's going on around you or where you exist. It means that you can exist anywhere. You can be the king of your own world, in any house, in any place, in with anyone, and you can then share these experiences for as long as you give up trying to do it outside of your own life.
You focus on the internal, because that's what matters. And then if you reach a point of where you're comfortable with yourself, then you can start sharing that with others. And
the whole point of why they go together is because when you do that, you are liberated. You are closer to liberating yourself away from the fear of death, because now you know you're living for yourself. You're shining for yourself. And in the picture, the one man sits in the middle, and he's, as Hector did it so well, he's the only one alive, and he's shining. He's in the sunlight. Shout out Hector.
That was a brilliant picture.
Drawing.
It's a brilliant drawing.
Everyone's a fan of it.
I wish I could show it.
We can, but it's about the relationship of living for yourself, so that your life matters in the grand scheme of things, and you're not going to feel this existential dread of insignificance for when your time comes, because you found greatness in yourself, and you found that significance in that moment. So when the almighty death comes and blows your insignificance away, at least you know you did as much as you could for yourself.
Exactly. And I think No, I completely agree with that sentiment, and I think it's so important for each person to recognize that within themselves, within their own life, and work towards that, because it's just a journey, right? But you mentioned one thing that I really want to touch upon before we get before we close out. That you mentioned that you mentioned that you do care work and you've realized a lot of things. I have a friend who does care work too, and I always speak to him and I ask him what he's realized about human nature from that, because he sees people in such a completely different way. You know, how he sees people, how he thinks about how people should be compassionate and kindness and all these things, right? So question now for you is, what have you learned about human nature, and what have you learned about compassion and kindness from, you know, the work that you've done? But also, like, looking outwards, how can people be more compassionate to people, just even amongst each other, or even the homeless guy that's the you know, the face in the dark? You know, how can we reach out to others? You know, we all have that fear of the unknown, but you know, when you work closely with people, you see people for what they are. But yes, what have you realized about human nature through your experiences?